This video is brought to you by Sporlan, quality, integrity, and tradition.
Well, we got a call on a walk-in freezer today, and I gotta say, I have a feeling that bungee has something to do with it. I hate those bungees, because it's totally iced up. This is a fairly new box, or fairly new coil and condensing unit that I put in on this guy. So we're gonna throw it into defrost. It's been icing up for a while. Throw it into defrost, check the heaters, and then we'll get in here and defrost it. All right, this is our condensing unit right here. We need to get into there. Interesting, it's satisfied. Was it satisfied or is it in defrost? Huh, I'm intrigued. It's in defrost. That's alarming. Because the fans were running, unless it literally just turned off when I walked up here. Let's get a meter out. So this is a standard walk-in freezer where the defrost clock's on the roof. The power controls up here, controls the evaporator. I've got my Fieldpiece SC480 here. So what we're gonna do is check between 1 and N to make sure that we have 208 volts, and we do. Now we're gonna check between N and 3. We have 208 volts, that's the heater circuit. And then let's check between 4 and N. We should have no power. And we have no power. So I think this thing might have just turned into defrost. That's odd, huh? So let's turn our meter on current and go right here. Yeah, we're running 8.9 amps. So let's run back downstairs. I think it's just a coincidence that this thing literally just turned into defrost when I came up here. But let's go downstairs, make sure the evaporator fan motors are not running, and see if the heaters are working. That is so funny that it literally just went in defrost, but look at how iced up it is inside there. Super iced up. That's crazy. This thing is jam-packed. So we're gonna open up the sides, see if we can hear the heaters popping and sizzling in there, see if we can get a current draw on them. This is my top heater. It's currently running 2 amps. This is my bottom heater, currently running 2 amps. And this is my drain pan heater, currently running 3 amps. So I think there's only 3 heaters in this guy, and it looks like they're all working. So I'm gonna go ahead and let it run in defrost while I'm getting my hoses and getting this guy disassembled. I went ahead and made it a really long defrost, and then we'll turn it off when we're ready to get the water hose in here. When I'm running my hose, I always leave a loop in here because oftentimes these will come loose and start leaking water, and it'll make a giant puddle on the ground. So I always leave a little loop in here and then try to run it very nicely over into here. Got it just sitting there. And then up in here, by me I put it into a really long defrost, like 2 hours, right? It's never gonna do that. But what I'm actually doing is testing the limit switches. So I may not say this all the time, but before I start defrosting things, I'm always checking the heaters while it's iced up and checking the limit switches. So it's been running in defrost now for about 10 minutes. What I'm checking is the defrost termination switch, which if the defrost termination switch fails, it'll time itself out of a defrost too fast. So it's important that we always check that while it's still iced up. But so far, it's looking like all the heaters are working and the defrost clock is working. So we're just gonna keep de-icing it, and then we'll finish our diagnosis once we get it all defrosted. Yeah, to say it's iced up is an understatement, right? Unfortunately, the motors are gonna get wet. There's nothing we can do about it. So these ECM motors can usually handle it, but still it sucks. I hate getting stuff wet, but we've got to because there's no other way to defrost it. Using my shower wand, we're gonna work our way through it nice and slow. Try not to get water on the floor or anything like that. Just defrost it a little bit at a time. We're using hot water. Getting up in here. Again, sucks, but the motors are getting wet. It is what it is. We're all put back together. So there's one heater down below on the back, one heater up top right there, and then a drain pan heater, and I believe I checked all those. All right, we're all defrosted. We're gonna turn it on. It should pop out of defrost because the coil's so hot, and it did. The green light's on, but it's in defrost. That's normal. Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that. That's doing what it's supposed to be doing. So we'll go ahead and turn it. There you go. And we're gonna let it run for a little bit. The evaporator fan motors are gonna take a minute to kick on. The sight glass should clear up. Then we'll let the coil get cold enough. Once the coil gets cold enough, then we'll throw it back into defrost and check the heaters one more time. All right, so we're back up in here. This guy's in defrost right now. It's been running for a little bit. So let's test all the heaters one more time. Drain pan heaters, 3 amps. bottom coil heater is 2.87 amps, and top coil heater is 2.88 amps. So we're good on that. The unit's getting the proper voltage. I don't see any problems with the limit switches. They don't look deformed or broken. So we're gonna go ahead and pop it out of defrost. Don't see refrigeration problems. Sight glass was clear. I don't see a need to put service gauges on it. So we're gonna tell them to keep an eye on it. We're gonna come back in about a day or two, follow up, make sure everything's working on it properly. I have a feeling they're propping that door open with that bungee. These are never super accurate, but it's showing a temperature difference because before it was in the high 30s, I believe, or somewhere in the middle. So it's actually dropping in temp, it's running, and like I said, we'll follow up another day, but it's already significantly dropping in temperature in here. All right, we are back today just to do a follow-up, make sure everything's good. Come in here, it is colder than you know what in here. Let's, back of the coil, looks like maybe they're still doing something with the door, a little frosty. We're gonna look into that because it's kind of weird with the frost pattern. But honestly, it looks like they're leaving the door open because it's right there. But we're just gonna double check everything. The bungee's not there anymore, but again, these guys and their doors. You can, well, look at this, look at this. See how you can see this? Looks like maybe the door gasket's bad too. Yeah. So maybe I have to get a new door gasket for it. That's gonna bring infiltration in. But no more bungee, so that's a plus, and the door actually shuts. But let's go onto the roof, check the defrost. All right, so we're probing up on the system, but I also threw it into a defrost, and we're gonna check the heaters one more time, but I can clearly hear them, and that little bit of frost is already gone, but we're gonna double check them just to make sure, and then we'll turn it back on. But clearly with this frost right here, there's moisture coming through the box, but that door gasket is a problem too. So these restaurants, a lot of them have started using gasket companies. They don't use us very much anymore for the gaskets, and this is what they get. They get the wrong gaskets being pushed into. That's not a traditional dart. They're too narrow, and they just don't last. They're junk. Obviously this door is trash too, but I mean, it could take a gasket and it would be fine, but you got to get the right gasket in there. There's a lot of factors that go into sizing a gasket, as I'm falling right now. There's a lot of factors that go into sizing a gasket. The width, the depth, and the length, and then also the dart. And if you just shove something in there, this is what you get. The door heater is hot. I can feel the heat strip, it's hot. But the air is just going right around the door gasket because it's the wrong style gasket. All right, so we checked the defrost. The defrost was fine, no problem, same thing. So we came back up onto the roof and we're probing up right now. We're just looking at the tablet, seeing what's going on here. I literally just turned it on, so it's gonna take a minute, but the sight glass is clear. I can see it from here. This is our sight glass right here. Okay, the sight glass is just a window into the system. So we're probed up on the liquid line pressure port, the suction port down at the evaporator. We have liquid line temperature. Now, because this unit has a subcooler circuit, it's a new AWEF compliant unit, you're actually gonna see measurable subcooling on these units. In the past, on receiver systems or systems that have receivers and TXVs, you'd see 1 to 2 degrees subcooling, you know, very minimal. But on these new systems, they have an added subcooling loop where after it comes out of the receiver, it goes back through the condenser for another pass. You actually get rather very measurable subcooling. So it's still building up right now, but we're at 5 degrees right now. So we're gonna give it some time. We're just gonna watch it, and then we'll check evaporator superheat and go look at the feed of the expansion valve to make sure we're evenly feeding and everything. Everything's still stabilizing, but my evap TD is kind of high, but I don't remember what I left it at the last time. So I don't have it written down. But I'm concerned though, so we're gonna go into here, probe manager. See, our battery's almost dead on the low pressure probe, so I sent someone down there to change it because that can mess things up. So we gotta have, you know, a good battery in it. These probes can degrade when the batteries get really low. So we're gonna do that real quick and then we'll finish analyzing the system. System's getting there, stabilizing out. You can clearly see that the DTC valve, discharge temperature controlled valve, has a sensing bulb in the top. Whenever the compressor head gets too hot, it opens up. It's essentially just an expansion valve. It's trying to reduce high discharge temperatures, help to save the life of the compressor. You see it on low temp when you have high compression ratios. But anyways, it's clearly working. You can see it feeding. Looking at my system right now, it's still stabilizing about 9 degrees superheat. That's looking good. Everything's still kind of moving around. Discharge temperature looks good. Evaporator temperature is -3. We're gonna give it a few more minutes. Looks like we do run a little bit higher evaporator TD on this system. I have to look at the sizing of everything. I can't remember what we went with and why we went with it. The equipment could be slightly mismatched, causing that. It's hard to say. Condenser TD, looking good. So yeah, we're just gonna watch it for a little bit longer, but I'm not seeing anything too scary. That evaporator superheat's gonna drop about 6 to 8 degrees is what I'm looking for on a low temp situation. I like to see the lower, especially since we have a suction line accumulator to protect the compressor. But it is a thermostatic expansion valve, so you tend to go a little conservative on the superheat settings because those valves, they tend to have a wide swing, open, closed, open, closed. So the suction line accumulator is an extra protection in case it feeds too much liquid refrigerant and it doesn't, you know, you don't want it coming back to the compressor basically. But so far so good. Sight glass is still looking clear. That should be good. All right, so I went ahead just out of curiosity and pumped the system down and we heated up the receiver just to see if it's where I left it when I did my install, and it is. The liquid level is right about at the 3/4 mark, so we know that the system has the amount of refrigerant that I put into it from the beginning. So in this situation, when I did my install and startup, I calculated the flooded charge and the flooded charge is 6.8 pounds. So we cleared the sight glass above the bypass pressure of the head pressure control valve. Then we added the extra 6.8 pounds, which, mind you, the manufacturer calculated using Sporlan's 90-30-1 method, where you essentially measure the condenser, figure out the internal volume, how much liquid you need at what temperature, and then we fill it up, okay? So I cleared the sight glass above the bypass pressure, so the head pressure was above the bypass pressure, cleared the glass, then I added the extra winter charge, so that way when and if the head pressure control valve does bypass, we know that it has the extra refrigerant in the system. So I marked it when I did the install, and then we just checked it by pumping it down, heating up the receiver, taking a thermal imaging camera, or you can take your fingers and you can literally just feel where the temperature difference happens, but the thermal imaging camera gives it a cool picture thing, you know? So we checked to make sure that it's still at the level that I left it at. So we know our charge is good. So we're just gonna keep watching the system come down to temp, but I'm liking everything I'm seeing. So my box was just about down to temperature, and I just wanted to see that superheat drop just a little bit because it was hovering right around the 10-degree range. So we turned the expansion valve 2/4 turns, and now we're just letting the system stabilize out, watching it, checking everything out. It's still coming down, so it's gonna take time. Every time you make a superheat adjustment, also too, make sure that you understand that there can't be any restrictions in the system, right? I didn't pull the strainer on the expansion valve, but I don't see any signs of the strainer being plugged up. But before you start adjusting superheat, you wanna make sure that you don't have a plugged up strainer because you'll just be wasting your time. Yeah, it's gonna take some time. The box, we brought the temperature up, but the expansion valve's still stabilizing out. It's at -6 right now. So we'll give it a few minutes. Superheat should drop just a little bit. But guys, everything is looking good on this. I'm gonna talk to them about ordering a new door gasket. Whether or not they have me do it, they'll probably have their gasket company do it. That's a big thing. We gotta get that door gasket replaced. But everything else on this system is checking out. Refrigerant charge is good, which I didn't suspect it wasn't, but we checked it anyways. Expansion valve's working, you know, everything's good. Right? So I really think that their problem was the door being propped open with that rubber bungee cord. With these restaurants, they have a lot of new employees right now, and they even have new managers, and it's hard to get them trained on how this equipment works right. The restaurant industry as a whole right now is just completely bogged down with employee shortages. So they're having to hire people that aren't trained properly, that don't understand how to operate restaurants, and they don't take care of the equipment correctly. So, you know, I know a lot of people say install door switches, do all this different stuff. That's a great thought, and I've tried to propose that to restaurant management on a corporate level. But they know and I know that door switches, while they do shut the equipment down, they lead to more nuisance calls with these restaurants where they're constantly leaving the doors open. So there's gonna be constant truck rolls to go out there and not find anything wrong. So it's kind of a fine line between install a door switch or not. And most of the time these restaurants don't want to. Same reason why they don't want curtain strips on there too, because the cooks just rip them off and then they just spend a bunch of money putting curtains on. And I realize the flip side to that is more service calls, right? But if you look at the grand scheme of it, while it frustrates me on a restaurant level, at each individual restaurant, if they get an iced up freezer call once a month, I mean, that's even excessive. Probably once every 2 months is what really happens at a restaurant. The cost of that, let's just say, you know, let's just say it's $1,000. It's not, but let's just say it's $1,000 service call. That's a lot less than having to replace curtain strips nationwide consistently over and over and over again. Or the nuisance calls because my walk-in freezer is at 30 degrees and then you go out there and you can't find anything wrong because the door was open. And then someone shut it and it's coming down to temp, but you're gonna do your best to watch it come down to temp when you're out there on the service call. So they lead to nuisance calls. And really the only solution in my eyes to these problems is get management and get employees trained properly. And corporations are working on that. Restaurant owners are working on that. It's just, this is a bumpy road coming out of all this craziness from the last couple years and the employee shortages. It's gonna take time to get back into the groove of things. And you know, I can be frustrated when I have to go out to do these service calls, or I can just you know, understand, like, while it is frustrating, this is just part of the game. So it is what it is, but we're still waiting. That superheat's coming down, so I'm gonna watch it a little bit longer, but we're gonna call this one done and tell them to keep an eye on it.
There is nothing worse than being on site working on a reach-in cooler. You're getting ready to walk out the door. You put your tools away and, oh, since you're here, can you take a look at my walk-in freezer? There's a little bit of ice on it. Come on, you know that one always gets you, right? And I get it. You know, people are going to say, oh man, but you're making money, so you need to shut your mouth. It's something about putting your tools away. It's something about being in the mindset of, all right, we're done, you know, and you're wrapping it up. And then they're like, oh yeah, you know, there's a little bit of frost over here. You mind just taking a look at this real quick, you know? And then it's like, okie dokie, here we go, you know? But anyways, it was an iced up walk-in freezer. Obviously, right when I showed it in the beginning, there was a bungee holding the door open. I'm pretty confident that was the cause of it all. But the box temperature was so high that it was hard for me to see the infiltration from the door gasket. Now, of course, I could have taken thermal imaging cameras and pieces of paper and slid things in the door, but I knew I was going to be coming back, so it's just easier. When the box is down to temperature, you come back in, you know, it's like negative whatever, and there's obviously frost all around the door. There's a problem, you know, it clearly leads to it. Now, I don't think that the door having the air leakage really caused the freeze up. I think it added to it, but that amount of ice that was on there, in my opinion, was caused by them propping that door open for extended periods of time with that silly bungee cord. And, you know, it's frustrating right now with these managers because what's happening is these restaurants, you know, you're just running into all new hires everywhere and it's having to retrain them, like I said. So it gets frustrating, you know. It's just one of those things we're having to deal with right now until things get better, you know. But I did my due diligence. I went through everything as best as possible, tried to verify, make sure the defrost, checked it multiple times, all that good stuff. Though this equipment is like only a year old, if that. Ironically, I know I made a video on this one and I think I talked about the install video, but this one, I got this service call like Christmas Eve or something. It was either Christmas Eve or Christmas Day I got this service call. But then I put them off till the next day or something like that. And it was just like, oh my gosh. And I remember being just bummed out, like this is going to be a miserable change out because, yeah. But anyways, they ended up getting a freezer truck, if you guys don't remember. And then the freezer truck wasn't working right. Like I went out there one day to check on it. And I'm like, this isn't freezing. And the company that delivered it's like, yeah, it's like 32 degrees. It's freezing. And I'm like, that's not a freezer truck. And then the guy's like, yeah, it is. All right, whatever. Just do your thing. It's not my problem, you know? But it was a whole thing. And then the freezer truck broke down. Yeah, that was a whole, but that's why I don't deal with that stuff. Customers ask me, can you get me a freezer truck? Nope, not going to do it. Not going to deal with that stuff because that just adds one more layer of responsibility on me. And yes, it is money, but it's one more layer of responsibility and I just don't need the drama because then if the freezer truck breaks, you know, and I supplied it and I'm charging them for it, then they want me to take care of all the problems. No, I don't want to deal with that. Call someone else. They'll deal with the freezer truck, you know, but it's just a whole pain in the butt. But anyways, As usual, I went off on a tangent. I really, really appreciate you guys making it to the end of the video as usual. You guys are amazing, okay? Thank you so very much for all the support you give this channel. I've said it many times, the easiest way to support these videos is just watch them from beginning to end without skipping through anything. That's the simplest way. A couple other methods. I have a website, hvacrvideos.com. Have merchandise available for sale there, hats, beanies, shirts, you guys know the drill, all that stuff. If you're interested, check it out, okay? Also, TrueTechTools.com. If you're interested in purchasing any tools, you can use my offer code BIGPICTURE to save, as of today, 11/17 of 21. You can save 8% on your order. If you know what you're going to purchase, shoot me an email. I'll generate an affiliate link. I get a little bit of an extra commission when you do that. You can still use the offer code too. You can donate to the channel if you want to do so via PayPal, via YouTube channel memberships, via Patreon. Yeah, all kinds of different ways. So but the easiest way is just watch the videos. You don't got to spend any money. Just takes a little bit of your time is all. So I really, really appreciate you. And I will catch you on the next one. Okay.